You learned to walk before you were 2 years old. You fell thousands of times. You pulled yourself up on furniture, on walls, on the legs of adults standing nearby. You recalibrated your balance after every fall, adjusted your weight distribution, learned to anticipate the movement of your own center of gravity before it happened. By the time you were done, you had mastered one of the most mechanically complex motor tasks any mammal performs. An act of continuous controlled falling that requires constant real-time coordination between your eyes, inner ear, cerebellum, and over 200 muscles. You have no memory of any of it. Not a fragment, not a single frame. The most intensive period of learning in your entire life, the years in which you acquired walking, running, language, object permanence, facial recognition, and the basic causal logic of how the physical world works, is completely, utterly gone. This is not normal forgetting. You forget things from last week because memory is imperfect and details fade. This is something different, something structural, a specific and total erasure of an entire phase of your existence, so complete that most people never stop to find it strange. They should. The phenomenon has a name: infantile amnesia. It was first formally described by Sigmund Freud in 1899, who noticed that his patients could rarely recall anything from before the age of 3 or 4, and found this strange enough to write about. For most of the century that followed, the dominant explanation was simple. Babies don't form memories because their brains aren't developed enough yet. The hardware isn't there. That explanation is wrong. You know it's wrong because infants demonstrably do form memories. A 3-month-old can learn that kicking their leg makes a mobile above their crib move, and will remember this association weeks later, resuming the kicking behavior when placed under the same mobile. 6-month-olds recognize their mother's face after weeks of separation. Toddlers remember specific events, a trip to the zoo, a visit from a relative in detail, for months afterward. The memory system is running. It is recording. The hardware is absolutely there. The recordings just don't survive into adulthood. The question is why? And the answer, when researchers finally started assembling it in the 1990s and 2000s, turned out to involve not one mechanism but several operating simultaneously. A perfect storm of neurological conditions that conspire to erase the earliest years almost completely. The first mechanism is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the brain structure most critical for forming what scientists call episodic memories, memories of specific events that happened at a specific time and place. Your memory of what you had for breakfast, of a conversation from last Tuesday, of the first day at a job, all of it runs through the hippocampus. In human infants, the hippocampus is one of the last brain structures to reach functional maturity. The dentate gyrus, a subregion of the hippocampus critical for distinguishing between separate memories rather than merging them, is still developing well into the second year of life, and in some respects continues maturing until early adolescence. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. Research led by neurobiologist Paul Franklin at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto has found that the very process of brain development actively destroys existing memories. New neurons are being generated in the hippocampus at an extraordinarily high rate during early childhood, a process called neurogenesis. These new neurons integrate into existing memory circuits, and as they do, they disrupt the circuits that stored earlier memories. The brain is not just failing to record new memories in infancy, it is actively overwriting the ones it has already made. Franklin demonstrated this in mice. Young mice that had learned a specific fear response showed rapid forgetting of that response, consistent with infantile amnesia. When the researchers artificially suppressed neurogenesis in the young mice, the forgetting slowed significantly. When they artificially elevated neurogenesis in adult mice, whose memory circuits are normally stable, adult mice began forgetting at rates similar to infants. The cause of infantile amnesia in this model is not the absence of memory formation. It is the presence of too much brain growth. The developing brain is building itself so rapidly that it cannot preserve what it has already stored. Every new neuron that integrates into the hippocampus is a potential disruption to an existing memory trace. The price of building the most sophisticated neural architecture on the planet is that the construction process destroys the records of its own early stages. There is a second mechanism that compounds this. Memory is not stored in isolation from language and narrative. The way adult humans consolidate and retrieve episodic memories is deeply entangled with the ability to construct a verbal narrative of events, to tell yourself the story of what happened. Research by psychologist Catherine Nelson has shown that children's ability to form durable long-term memories increases dramatically around the same time they develop the capacity for narrative self-description. The ability to say, "I did this, and then this happened, and then I felt this." Before that narrative capacity develops, experiences may be encoded but cannot be organized into the kind of retrievable story that survives long-term. This explains a cross-cultural finding that adds another layer of complexity. The age at which people report their earliest memories varies systematically across cultures. Studies comparing adults from Western cultures with adults from Maori communities in New Zealand, where early childhood is heavily scaffolded by rich, detailed narrative storytelling by adults, found that Maori participants reported earliest memories from significantly younger ages than Western participants. The cultural practice of narrating early experiences to children appears to help those experiences survive. The memories that get talked about get kept. The ones that don't get narrated dissolve. Which means infantile amnesia is not purely biological. It is partly a product of whether the people around you told you the story of your own early life in enough detail to give your brain a narrative structure to anchor the memories to. There is one more dimension that researchers have only recently begun exploring. Children under 3 exist in a fundamentally different relationship to time than adults do. Adult episodic memory is organized around a continuous sense of self moving through time. The same, I, that experienced breakfast this morning will experience dinner tonight and will remember both tomorrow. This temporal self-concept, the sense of being a continuous person with a past and a future, develops gradually across early childhood and is not fully established until around age 4. Before it is established, experiences may be encoded without being tagged to a self that persists. There is no I, yet to whom the memory belongs. And so when the continuous self finally crystallizes, the earlier memories have no owner to claim them. You were conscious during those years. You were experiencing things, pain, pleasure, surprise, recognition, the specific texture of learning something for the first time thousands of times in a row. All of it was happening fully and completely to someone. That someone left no record you can access. The person who learned to walk, who fell and got up and fell again, who figured out language from raw sound, who built the foundational architecture of everything you would later become, you cannot reach them. Not because they didn't exist, because the brain that built you consumed the memories of building itself in the process. You are the result of a childhood you cannot remember. And everything you are now was assembled in a period you have no access to whatsoever.